knitting tool. Now, some of you may be familiar with knitting where you use two needles to knit together something fun like a scarf or a hat. But did you know there are other tools that you can use to knit things with? Let's learn about them today. So instead of using two needles to knit with, you can actually use something called a knitting loom. A knitting loom has all of these little spokes as well as a special tool that you use to help create the stitches like you would with two knitting needles. Now, these looms do come in different sizes. We've got these really great round looms here. These are great because you can make hats really easily and scarves from them, and you can also get larger looms like this that allow you to make blankets and bigger scarves and other items using the much bigger looms with the increased amount of spokes around them. And again, they do come with a special little tool. It is a curved hook needle here that helps you pull the yarn over each stitch, and it creates the knitting as you go around and around the loom. Now today we're going to show you how to make your very own hand knitting tool where you can create a really neat yarn rope just by using a couple household things. So to engineer your very own hand knitting tool, what you're going to need is a cardboard tube. You can use an old toilet paper roll, an old paper towel roll. You just need enough of the roll for you to hold in your hand and apply popsicle sticks to. I've got a couple different popsicle sticks here, and you only need 4 to make this very simple hand knitting tool. Now, depending on how big your tube is, you can bring it up higher if you want, or lower. I prefer it lower just because it's easier to get the stitches into the middle of the tube for you to create your item with. Now, to secure the popsicle stick, we're just going to use some plain tape. I've got some painter's tape here. You can use duct tape, you can use regular Scotch tape, any kind of tape as long as you can get it to stick to your cardboard tube. Space out the popsicle sticks so that they are even. So across from this one, I'm going to go ahead and place another popsicle stick right there and make sure everything looks pretty even. And then I'm going to use another piece of tape to secure it to my tube again, my third popsicle stick, and line it up just like this in between the other two. And I'm going to go ahead and add some more tape. And one last stick goes on the other side so that you have 4 points around your tube. And there we go. Now we are going to add some more tape to this so that it's very secure. You want to make sure there's tape around the top and around the bottom because you don't want your popsicle stick posts to move like that. No, we want to make sure everything is very secure so that when we wrap our yarn around them to create the stitches, you don't have a lot of movement messing up your stitches. For now, I'm just going to make sure I've got plenty of tape around the bottom part so that they are very secure. And I'm just going to add a little bit more tape at the top just so that it's extra secure. One more wrap around the top. You've made your very own hand knitting tool. Now we'll learn how to cast on our stitches and start knitting. Ready, guys? Now, to use the knitting tool, you're going to need some yarn, and you're going to need some scissors, and you will likely want to grab a toothpick to help you finish off the project once you've finished knitting. Usually you can get these at a craft store. It is a big plastic needle that lets you thread the yarn through the end and help you tie off your finished knitting project. But if you don't have one of these, a toothpick and some tape will help you finish that off, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. First, we're going to learn how to cast on to the knitting tool and create our first couple of stitches. So we're going to take our yarn, and you want to make sure you've got plenty of slack on your yarn here, and we're going to thread the yarn through the middle of the knitting tool. Once you've threaded the yarn through the middle of the knitting tool, you are going to want to make sure there's plenty on the end here so you can help tie that off later. And what I like to do is I like to bring it up and hold on to it just so that as I'm casting the stitches around the spokes, of our knitting tool, I don't lose the end and it doesn't come up as I'm trying to make the stitches, okay? So now that it's taut in our hands, what we're gonna do is we're gonna loop the yarn around each of the wooden popsicle sticks in a special way. So to do this, you're gonna go to the first spoke here, and you're going to cast on a stitch by going like this. So with it here in your hands, you're gonna very lightly wrap it around just like this. It'll come around the outside of the spoke and then back towards the middle, and then you're gonna kind of pull it this way. You don't want to pull too hard, because if you pull it too hard, your stitches are going to be too tight and it'll be really hard to create the stitch. So very lightly, just pull it this way, give it a little bit of slack, and then you're going to wrap your yarn around the next spoke, around the outside, and then back towards the middle. And now you're going to go across the way to the next one, and again, it's going to come around the outside, and you're going to want to go back towards the middle, and we're going to come around the very last one. Once again, the yarn comes around the outside and then comes back inside, just like that. And then we're going to go and land on our first one, just like that. So now that we've put 4 loops around our wooden spokes, we're going to go one more time around, okay? Stop. We're gonna come around, and we're not gonna go across to the next one. We're gonna just go ahead and wrap it like this. So now what you have are 2 loops per spoke, and we're gonna go, and if you can, you wanna hold on to your string right there so that it doesn't come off and undo this loop, because that's an important loop. Now this is the part that's a little tricky, but you should be able to do this really easily with your fingers. As long as you didn't pull the loops too tight here, you should have no problem. So I'm going to take the bottom loop that we made earlier, and I'm going to pull it on top, and I'm going to slip it behind the spoke, leaving that second loop to come down. Okay, friends, let me show you that one more time on the next one. So this is the one that we had just finished doing the 8th loop on. You can turn it, and we're gonna pull this loop here. It is a little tricky, but you should be able to grab this first loop and pull it very gently over the top, and then you kind of want to just press down that other loop towards your tube so that you can keep going, just like that. And then here it is again. Here's the other spoke with the 2 loops. We grab the bottom one and we pull it over and let it sit. And then we'll go to the next one and pull, and there. That's how you've created your first couple of stitches using the knitting tool. Now, after you've done that, you're going to repeat this process over and over and over again using that yarn that you're holding on to. See how it sticks out just like that, and it's not coming up. It's because you've created a stitch to keep that in place. To keep going, you're going to take the yarn once again, and you're going to go towards the middle and wrap it around. And now let me show you what will happen if you did this too tight. If I go back and I pull harder and make it taut, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be a little bit difficult for you to pull your yarn over the top of that wooden spoke. So that's why you want to give it a little bit of breathing room here where it's not super tight. Now, if you're not careful, you might take off both loops, and that's okay. We can always restart our project and try again. It does take practice, but with practice, you can get better at it and create really cool things. Now, with the other looms that we showed you earlier, there was a special tool that you can also use with your hand knitting tool. If you don't have the special tool from the store, what I recommend is you can try using a toothpick, and you can use the toothpick to help you get in under this first stitch to bring it over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my toothpick and I'm going to slide it under. I'm going to pull it and I'm going to let it come over just like that, and that's really helpful in case you can't grab it with your own fingernails. The hooks look like this. They are usually made of metal. They might be made of plastic, but they do help you get under that yarn to pull it over that loop and bring it back over again, just like that. Now, eventually, you guys will create a really cool long rope. You can make bracelets with them, you can make a headband with them. There's all sorts of wonderful things you can make using your knitted yarn on your knitting loom. Now, to finish off your project, what we're going to do is we're going to need the toothpick and a little bit of tape to help you secure the yarn. So once you've completed the last couple of stitches you've wanted and you've got your 4 loops left on your loom, you're going to want to give yourself plenty of yarn on the end here so that you can weave it through each of the stitches and tie it off. So I'm going to cut this part off, and the goal is to slip them through each of the stitches, and then we'll pull it off all together, and then you'd be left with a finished end. To do this though, because this is all fuzzy and not very easily stuck under the stitches, we're going to take a little bit of tape, we're going to take our toothpick, and we're going to pretend this is our needle. We're going to attach our yarn to the toothpick using a little bit of the tape here, and then we'll thread it through the stitches and finish this off. So just make sure it is very nice and secure on here. Feel free to use a little more tape. You want to make sure it's nice and smooth though, so it doesn't get caught under the yarn. So here is my makeshift needle, just like that. I've got my yarn, it's pretty secure in there. So from here, this was our last stitch, and what we want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and thread this through each of the loops. So from this one, I'm going to take my little wooden needle here and I'm going to push it underneath, just like that. And you want to make sure you don't puncture your yarn, because that'll make things very difficult. You want to make sure you just go under the loop itself, and then you're going to pull this through just like that. Pull the yarn through, just like that. Come back through this one, and oops, I want to make sure that's on the outside. And then we'll go and come back to this one and go under once more until you've gone under all the loops. So then you can see you've got a round of yarn around the outside. This is the part now where you can go ahead and remove it from the spoke. So we're just going to lift it up carefully off the top there. Pull this all together so that it bunches the last couple of stitches like that. So now you can remove your project from the loom and go ahead and make something neat, like a necklace, just like that. And we just take off the extra with some scissors and you're good to go, just like that. Now that we've learned how to engineer our own knitting tool and how to cast on stitches and cast off our stitches, there are just a couple of things to remember when we're using our knitting tool. Compared to the special knitting looms, our hand tools don't have the special notches and grooves that were specifically designed on here to make it easy to make the stitches. So because our hand tool does not have a special notch on it to help guide the toothpick or the knitting hook, we do want to just be very careful with bringing our stitches over the top so that we don't lose both stitches. And then another great tip is to make sure you gently pull the string that's coming out from the middle so that the stitches that you've made don't start bunching up within the middle of the tube. That kind of helps bring it down and helps kind of even out the shape of your project. And then of course, once you're all done with your knitting project and you like the amount of length that you've produced, you can go ahead and turn your creation into a lot of cool things. Like you can make yourself a cool bracelet, you can use it as a scarf, for your teddy bear. Or you can even turn it into your very own headband if you want to make it into a headband. So friends, get creative, use whatever color yarn you'd like to use different sizes of yarns, and just have a lot of fun with your cool new hand knitting tool. So friends, I hope you guys had fun learning how to engineer your own hand knitting tool and how to knit your very own cool project. Now, be sure to show us your great creations by tagging us online. Tag the Anaheim Public Library through your social media to show us your neat creations. And of course, stay tuned for more STEAM adventures with the Anaheim Public Library.